In this video, I am covering 3 different types of raw vegan diets and their benefits and issues with each, and I've tried all 3 of them, and I'll let you know what I think of all 3. So one of them is the low-fat, high-carbohydrate, high-fruit diet known as the 80-10-10 diet by Dr. Doug Graham. The high-fat diet I'm comparing it with is one is known as Gourmet, where you'll make a raw lasagna, or there's dehydrated foods and they're super fancy and there's a lot of ingredients. And the other one is much more simplified, and this one is an autoimmune protocol by Dr. Brooke Goldner. So, and I wanted to tell you why people do these diets, why you might want to try it or incorporate some aspects of these diets into what you eat every day or maybe more often, and why I tried it. And yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so let's start out with Dr. Doug Graham's high fruit diet, and so it's 80-10-10. So the 80 stands for 80% of the foods that you consume are from carbohydrates, mostly fruit. The other 10% is from fat, so those can be nuts or seeds. And the other 10% is from protein, which you're going to get from the nuts and the seeds, and sufficient amount of fruit. So you have to eat a lot of fruit. So I tried this diet, and the issue for me is that you have to consume so much fruit to get your daily calories. And you do eat greens as well. You'll have your salads, but it's very, very strict. He does not allow dehydration, no vinegars, and the only herbs that you are allowed to have on his program are fresh. So no dried herbs whatsoever. So it's very, very limiting, but it's simple because you just go to the store and you buy stuff that's fresh. So the issue was there was so much fruit. I would have a whole bunch of fruit, like I'll make a fruit salad, or I would make a fruit smoothie. And I got this crazy sugar high. But it wasn't like, oh, yay! It was like, oh, this feels horrible. And immediately after, I would just do some cardio. Felt like I was like exhaling fructose, which is from fruit, like all day long. So I'd have some big fruit, salad for breakfast, and then for lunch I was like, oh my, fruit just, I don't want it. So I just wanted some like vegetables. So I'd make like a zucchini dish, like zoodles and something else, and then I was okay. But I just felt like it was just so much fruit, and I was disgusted by it. And the other thing is I am diabetic. I'm considered type 1.5, so it's really type 1. There's a spectrum. Type 1, type 1.5, and 2. So I'm in the middle where I do produce some insulin. If you have 10 or more grams of fat, and it can be from anything, nuts, seeds, avocado, then if you're diabetic, then the sugar stays in the bloodstream. And it needs more and more insulin to get it in there. It's not enough. And so I do have to take insulin injections anyway. So with all that fruit, my blood sugar was really high, and they say, oh, it's supposed to be better than if you had eaten potatoes. But let me tell you, it was worse. It was much higher. I had to take a lot more insulin. But what I did notice on this 80-10-10 program was that my swelling in my hands or my fingers were getting a lot better. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to try the protocol, his plan, because I have a couple autoimmune conditions. Now, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. And then when you have one autoimmune disease or condition, you typically get more and more as you get older, which is horrible. So I wanted to see if it would help the swelling in my hands, and that's called the condition is called erythromelalgia. And the other one is Raynaud's, Raynauds. So I did notice after 7 days on the program that my hands were getting less swelling and they were feeling better and they were looking better. But the whole fruit thing with the blood sugar control was just too hard. I did it for 7 days and then I stopped. He also does not allow any use of the dehydrator, no juices, so you can't even juice an orange because he wants you to have the whole fruit, so you got to have the fiber in it, and salt. He doesn't allow any salt, so those are challenges for a lot of people. He doesn't allow coffee, which makes sense, you know, it's a roasted bean, and no tea, which is such a bummer. So I was making my own ginger tea. I would just throw some fresh ginger in a pot and just heat that up, but that's kind of boring. My hands are starting to swell again, so I'm going to start raw vegan again for a little bit, and then I'm going to try an elimination diet. So I might do another video on that. So let's compare that with let's go for the Gourmet. So the Gourmet is what I actually tried when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, because I wanted to see if there was a way that I could reverse it. And because I've read that sometimes, especially if you catch it early enough and you go raw, you can save your pancreatic function and you might be able to reverse type 1 diabetes. So back when I guess it was about 13 years ago when I tried it. So the Gourmet raw vegan is you can have everything raw and there is some flexibility in it. But the thing is you can have, it's typically really high in nuts, it's high in seeds, it's high in fat. Some raw vegans add olive oil to a bunch of their dishes and that gives it that creaminess, and then the nuts make it, you know, you can make a creamy dressing. And I was making these raw pizzas and there was like a nut crust, and you know, the agave you add to the sauce, and agave is a sweetener which is highly glycemic, and that made my blood sugar really high. And all the fats from, at that time I was not using a lot of oil, very, very minimal oil, because it didn't make a lot of sense to me to add a bunch of oil to my food when at that time I was trying to lose weight. And so all those nuts hurt my stomach and I could not lose any weight, and my blood sugars were actually getting a lot worse. And a lot of the foods, while they were pretty good, some of them were terrible, they had the agave, they had a lot of dates. You want that sweetness, so people say instead of agave, use dates. So I was using a lot of dates, and that's highly glycemic, not good for your teeth either. And so that I stopped doing that because one is the prep. It takes so long to make a meal. Some of them you have to plan 24 hours in advance. There is way more cutting and chopping than a typical meal. They say, oh, well, you have to cut and chop if you're doing raw vegan. Not as much if I'm making like a pot of stew. So and then there's all these different things that you have to do, and it takes so long. It would take like an hour and a half to make a meal, and then I wouldn't really like it. But the whole point was that it was not helping me. It was hurting me. My blood sugar was getting worse. And then, so I never went back to that, although I did love a lot of the cookies, like the almond cookies that you dehydrated and the coconut cookies. There's a lot of coconut. So you can make food taste really good if it's raw by adding all these fattening elements. But a lot of people on these gourmet diets, they actually get sicker and they get more problems with skin issues. Their health starts deteriorating because there's just too many nuts and too much fat. Dr. Brooke Goldner has a specific autoimmune disease reversal program, and she does not allow nuts at all. and she only allows 2 types of seeds, chia or flax, and they must be ground, because if you eat them whole, it'll just go right through you. So you don't get the benefit from those particular seeds. And she says the reason why is if you have walnuts, even if they're raw, and other seeds like sunflower or pepita, those have too many omega-6s. So you probably heard of, you want your omega-6 to 3 ratio, probably more in line, but if you eat the walnuts and especially peanuts, then your omega-6 ratio is out of whack. Like for instance, olive oil is a high omega-6 ratio, and then the omega-6s are not healthy. So you definitely want higher omega-3s. And if you have too many omega-6s and not enough omega-3s, those won't convert to ALA and DHA, which is good for your health, and it helps you recover and heal. So, okay, so she also recommends 1 pound of raw cruciferous vegetables a day. So that could be, bok choy, baby greens, arugula, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. So a pound, and not, cabbage and stuff. It's kind of a lot, but she's not the only one that recommends a pound of raw cruciferous vegetables a day. A lot of other plant-based doctors who understand the role of nutrition in healing our bodies. So Dr. Furman, he's not a raw. He recommends eating a little bit of everything, cooked and raw. So he also recommends 1 pound of raw. And so does Dr. Douglas Graham and the 80-10-10 program. So the other thing that she allows on her program, she allows avocados. Doug Graham does too, and so do the other raws, because it's a whole fruit. It's high fat, but she says you can have as much as that as you want it. And I asked her about, she wants people to have at least 1/2 a cup of these raw seeds a day, the chia, the flax. And I wrote to her and I said, that's a lot of fat. Yes, it's healthy fat, but too much of any type of fat is not good, especially for people with heart disease, which I don't have, thank goodness. My blood pressure is good. My total cholesterol is 149, which is really good. But too much fat of any type will start getting in your blood vessels and arteries and make it harder for the nutrients to go through, and really bad for circulation. But she basically dismissed it, and she said, no, it's fine. I've had success on this program. But she hasn't worked with a lot of type 1 diabetics. I don't know if she's worked with any. I'm not sure. So anyways, that is a lot of fat, and too much fat is a huge issue for diabetics. That's the cause of type 2 diabetes, is too much fat in the diet. So she does not want a lot of fruit in the diet. She says it hinders health and getting you better quicker. So she only allows 25% of the diet to come from fruit. So she has different types of programs. One's super strict and one's more flexible. On the more flexible, you can do vinegar, you can have nutritional yeast. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You can do I think she allows some dried herbs, and you can do more fruit, or you can just add these ingredients to what you're already eating. So it is definitely vegan. She says nobody should have dairy or animal products, because that's what triggers autoimmune conditions and all sorts of diseases in the first place. So what she wants pretty much everyone to do is take a massive blender, a huge one, and you fill it up 75% with greens, those cruciferous vegetables. You do 96 ounces of water, not necessarily fill that whole thing up, but you have to have that much water every day. And then you can throw your flax or your chia seeds in there, and then the 25% you put in your fruit, and then you put that in for a couple minutes, blend that up, and drink it. and the frozen fruit will make it taste a little bit better. Oh, I forgot to mention, on Dr. Doug Graham, he does not allow frozen fruit. So you can do smoothies, but they're room temperature, so they definitely doesn't taste like nice cream. It's not as good. So I made a couple of the smoothies, and they're gross. I'm sorry. I don't like my smoothies to taste like grass. I don't like it to be gritty, and I tried blending it up more and more. The only way you can make it taste good is make it like 50% bananas and your favorite fruit, and then the rest some greens. But it's just like, oh, so gross. And I would split that up, and I would drink it throughout the day, and I would try not to hurl because it just tasted so bad. And then it would like bum me out that the food's just awful. Like, this is all I get to eat? This is what my life is? And so, yeah, I tried the salads, but then if you can't add much fruit to the salad, you got the same yuck problem. And I remember one day I made it, nice pack full, and I threw I threw a whole bag of broccoli in there. And it was pretty gross, but I drank it, and I drank it really fast. And I was sitting on the couch, and me and my husband were watching TV, and I said, my stomach hurts. I think I'm gonna throw up. And he said, you want me to grab the bucket? I said, yes. So he got the bucket, and yeah, I threw up my whole smoothie. It was like 2 inches worth of green barf from all the leaves. And yeah, it's just so, and then I tried, I actually think the broccoli might have been bad. So not her fault, but other people have said they have thrown up from these smoothies. They're just too much. And then I was doing the chia, which is nice, kind of depending on how much you put in. Chia seeds expand, and so it's like a tapioca, it's coca, it's like thicker. But after a couple of days of I did other smoothies that were more fruit, and then it was just like I kept tasting chia all day long. Like, I would brush my teeth, floss, I would scrape my tongue. It's just like I was still tasting chia. So a lot of people were having problems with the chia. Same problem as me, which is really interesting. So, and I wasn't even having that much chia. I think I had like 3 or 4 tablespoons. And so I started doing flax, which was better. But yeah, for me, I can't do those green smoothies. I don't like them, and I could only do it for 3 days. Whereas on the high fruit diet, I was able to do that for 7 days. So a lot better, but still not long enough. But on the Gourmet, I was able to do that for a couple months. But on all of these diets, my blood sugar, it was super hard to control. The healthiest one, I kind of think a little mixture of all of them would be reasonable for anyone to use. I think that each one is a little bit too restrictive. So I think high fruit is great. That much fruit that Doug Graham's recommending, 80-10-10, I think that's a bit excessive. And being so strict you can't even freeze your fruit. The reason why people use these raw vegan diets, obviously to improve whatever medical condition they have, and they have proven to help a lot of people. They do reduce it or reverse it. And the reason, some of the reasons are, or maybe, is that when you cook food, when you heat it up, even at a low temperature, you are releasing the oxygen in that food. You're drying it out. And even dehydrators at low temperatures. Now, when you can smell the food in the air, and you're like, yummy, that's how you know you're releasing the oxygen, or you're losing the oxygen in the food. And additionally, as you cook foods, you are reducing the nutrients. You are reducing the proteins. So if you're doing raw vegan, it's hard to get a lot of enough protein, and so you, by heating it, you're reducing the protein, you're reducing the minerals, the phytonutrients, everything. So that's why you've probably heard is that you don't want to cook your food at high temperatures. Not only does it add carcinogens, you know, like when you grill something, you got the blackened part, or you're broiling something or baking. Those are the worst, and frying, terrible. So that's why the higher the temperature, the more you cook the food, longer you cook the food, the more you are making it less healthy. So the more variety in your diet, the healthier you will be, because you'll have more diversity in your gut microbiome, and that is what allows us to fight viruses and make you healthier. So people think illness is about eating the wrong foods, and it's not necessarily that. It's about eating the right foods, and a lot of them, and having most of them as raw as possible. And if you can eliminate the inflammatory foods, or at least limit them, and have a bunch of the healthy foods like your salads and your fruit and your vegetables, then that will make you healthier and stronger. So I think incorporating elements of all these diets, you know, some frozen fruit, making into a smoothie, you know, if that will help you get more fruit in your diet, great. And if you don't have enough fresh herbs, which is really hard to find at the store, especially nowadays, then adding some dried herbs to your food, as long as it doesn't cause a negative reaction for you, to me that really seems fine. If you have any questions, let me know, and hope to see you soon.